Today we are going to be discussing one-step equations and inequalities that contain multiplication and division. Your learning goal for today is I can solve a one-step equation and inequality. I can explain how to solve a one-step equation and inequality. Words to know: equation, inequality, inverse, variable. I thought the cartoon was very appropriate since we are now doing algebra. It says, just a darn minute. Yesterday you said x equals 2. Let's review a few things about equations and inequalities when we are solving them for a variable. If we have x plus 4 equals 7, we would have to do the inverse to get x by itself. So I would subtract 4 and subtract 4 from both sides to keep it balanced. And this would become 0, so I would just have x on this side, and this would become 3. So when we're adding, we're subtracting to solve for a variable. And maybe this would help some people visualize why do we do that. So let's say we know this is 3 plus 4 equals 7. If I subtract 4 from both sides, these will become 0. I will have 3 equals 3. So it's a true statement. That is why we have to balance when we are solving equations. So now if I had a subtraction problem, if I had x minus 12 equals 20. So to get x alone, we would have to add 12 to both sides of the equation. Remember, your equal sign is that balance or wall. This becomes 0, and I have x equals 32. So if we know the inverse for adding is subtracting and the inverse for subtracting is adding, let's think about what it would be for multiplication and division. Let's start by looking at visuals so we can wrap our minds around why do we always do the inverse to solve. So if we think of these as boxes on this side, so these are boxes with an unknown amount, and these are, we'll say, chocolate pieces. We want to know how many pieces of chocolate are in each box. So if I look, and I have 3 boxes and I have 9. So that would mean I am dividing each of the chocolates into the 3 boxes. So there are 3 chocolates in each box. So this would look like 3b for 3 boxes equals 9 pieces of chocolate. So remember, this means 3 times b, even though there's no symbol there. So to do the inverse, I would divide by 3, divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 leaves me with 1b. You can either write 1b or just leave it b. And then 9 divided by 3 is 3. So one box contains 3 chocolates. Why don't you try this one on your own, pause the video, and then come back when you are done. Okay, welcome back. Let's try this one together. This time I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes. You can use X or A or whatever letter you want to use. Remember, it's just a variable. And that equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on this side. So if I have 5b, 5 times b equals 10, I'm going to divide by 5. And remember, a fraction is also just division. There's just 2 different ways you can write it. So b would equal 2. And if you split these into their boxes, you would have made the same result that I did. Now we are looking at one-step equations without a visual. So remember, a fraction is just a division. So this really is just saying n divided by 4. So if I'm dividing, I have to think, what is my inverse? So the inverse of dividing is multiplying. And I'm actually going to come over here and write this bigger so you can see. So if I multiply this by 4, think of this as two fractions. I would have to do 4 over 1. So this would end up being 4n divided by 4. I would also need to multiply this by 4. 7 times 4 is 28. And then 4 divided by 4 leaves me with n, 1n, equals 28. That is why we multiply, because we're looking for this to cancel out. So that's why you do the opposite when you are also dividing. So this next one, though, is a multiplication. 3 times y equals 18. So to get rid of the 3, I'm going to have to divide by 3 on both sides. So I have y equals 6. And some people like to write the problem this way. They like to say divided by 3 divided by 3. Remember the wall I've talked about, that what you do to one side, you have to do the other. Either way you solve it, whether it is this way or that way, it'll still give you the same answer. Okay, let's try 2 more together. So in this one, we have a division, n divided by 4 3/10. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4 3/10. And I'm actually going to draw the wall. So that would cancel out, just like we saw earlier. I'm not going to rewrite it this time. And I would have n left over. And then I have to do 9 4/10 times 4 3/10. So 3 times 2 is 12, 9 times 3 is 27, plus the 1 is 28. Placeholder, 4 times 4 is 16, carry my 1 again. 9 times 4 is 36, plus that 1 is 37. So 2, 8 plus 6 is 14. That becomes 10, carry my 1, that becomes 4. Then I look how many places are behind the decimal? 1, 2, so there should be 2 places. So n equals 40 and 42 hundredths, and that is a decimal spot. Okay, let's look at the next one. So this is saying 3/10 times y. So we know it's multiplying, so we need to divide. And this one I am going to rewrite so we can think about it as mathematically with fractions. So 3 1/3 divided by 3/10. And we should remember when we have fractions, to divide, we actually change it to multiplication and flip the second fraction. But first, I'm going to change the first number to an improper. 3 times 3 is 9, plus the 1 is 10. So I have 10/3. And then I'm going to flip. We're going to change that to multiplication. Remember we talked about if we change this, then we have to change the number behind it. So it becomes 10/3. So 10 times 10 makes 100. 3 times 3 makes 9. 9 will go in there 11 times, make 99, and I'd have 1 left over and 1/9. So y is actually going to equal 11 and 1/9. And we can always check our answer by plugging it back into the problem. Now you try solving these 2 problems on your own. Pause the video, and when you come back, the problems will be worked. Welcome back. I hope you worked out the problems. I know they were pretty lengthy, especially the division. A few things I want to highlight is that when you are multiplying, remember you have to change this into an improper. That's where I got the 5 halves, and just multiply straight across. And either one of these answers are correct. Just make sure you follow directions if it says to write it in the simplest form. I also wanted to point out that when I was dividing decimals, I moved the decimal in both the denominator and the numerator, the same amount of place values. We have done determining if a solution is true in the previous video with adding and subtracting. Now we are going to do it with multiplication and dividing. I'm going to do the first 2 as examples, and I will leave the last one for you to do on your own. So in this first one, they're saying, if p is equal to 12, would it be a solution for 9p equals 108? So just like we did in our last unit, we're going to plug it in to evaluate if it could be true. So I have 9 times 12, and if you need to, write it vertically. 12 times 9 is 18. Carry your 1, 9 times 1 is 9, which makes it 10. So 108 is equal to 108. So it is a true statement. Okay, so in this next problem we have, is n equals 4 a solution to the equation n divided by 6 equals 4? The key there is that it's saying divided. So if I plug in the 4 for the n, I have 4 divided by 6 equals 24. Well, we should know that 4 divided by 6 isn't even a whole amount. So this cannot be true. You try the last one, and if you have questions, bring it to class. We are going to take a quick look at solving inequalities in one-step equations, just like we did with adding and subtracting and graphing them. So I'm going to do the first one, and I'm going to leave the bottom two for you to do. So we have x divided by 8 is greater than 3, or you could say 3 is less than x divided by 8. So we want to multiply both sides by 8, and I shouldn't have used an x because we are in algebraic, so I'm going to use a point, so times 8 times 8. So right here you could think 8 divided by 8 makes 1, and then 8 times 3 would give me 24. So 24 is less than x. So I always like to put the number in the middle, so 24. And I'm going to actually skip just because it's hard to write with a stylus. So 23, 22. So I look to see, is it an open circle closed? This one's going to be an open. And it's saying that x is greater, so I need to go towards the higher numbers. Now you pause the video and try the next two on your own. Welcome back. Here are the answers and their graphs. Both of these are going to be closed circles because they have the equal to sign underneath both of them. Your to-do list before class is to complete your notes, write down questions, be prepared to discuss with your group, and work some of the problems out in the review so you're not waiting till the night before the test. Reminders, we have a concept check tomorrow on one-step equations and inequalities, and we also have our equations and inequalities test on Friday.